All right, now let's see if we can make the same argument using cosine instead of sine. Remember that cosine of theta reference and cosine of theta are the same value except possibly for the signum. The signum we take care of with our good friend, all students take calculus, but the values are going to be the same for the theta and for theta reference. So our three triangles are, there's the pi over 6 triangle. If any theta reference using pi over 6 uses this triangle. The horizontal distance is root 3 over 2. The vertical distance is 1/2. For pi over 4, it's 1 over radical 2, 1 over radical 2. And for pi over 3, it's this same triangle up on n. Now this is radical 3 over 2. This is 1/2. Here's pi over 3. So cosine of any value in the pi over 6 reference angle family is going to be, cosine is the x coordinate. Now we're looking, anytime we're doing cosine, we want the horizontal value, just like anytime we did sine, we wanted the vertical value. So cosine of anything in the pi over 6 family, cosine of any value in the pi over 6 family is square root of 3 over 2, radical 3 over 2. Up to the signum. The signum is determined by what quadrant you're in. So put that together. Cosine of 7 pi over 6, that's in the pi over 6 family. Cosine is the horizontal side, so we know the value is root 3 over 2. Now we need to know what signum we need. That's based upon the quadrant. 7 pi over 6 in the reference angle family, that's 1, 5, 7, 11. 7 is the quadrant 3. What is cosine in quadrant 3? Cosine in quadrant 3 is negative. So you can do this in either order. I think this more straightforward would be to put the value first and then take care of the signum based upon the quadrant. Cosine of 7 pi over 4. Cosine is the horizontal value, 1 over square root of 2, for the reference angle family pi over 4. Cosine of pi over 4 is 1 over square root of 2, so cosine of 7 pi over 4 is the same value, but now we have to account for the signum. In 7 pi over 4, that, remember, the values are 1, 3, 5, 7. This is quadrant 4. We know cosine is positive in quadrant 4. So the value is 1 over square root of 2 positive because it's the horizontal distance for this triangle. Notice the special case. For the pi over 2 family, the vertical and the horizontal are the same. And so the values, except for the signum, are always going to be 1 over square root of 2 for sine and cosine of anything in the pi over 4 family. All we need to do is figure the signum based upon what quadrant we're in. All right, cosine of 4 pi over 3, that's in the pi over 3 family. That's the horizontal value for this triangle. X is the horizontal distance. So it's going to be 1/2, but now we need to account for the signum. The value is 1/2, but what is the signum? 4 pi over 3, that's in the pi over 3 family. That's why you need to know the reference angle families. That's 1 pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, 4 pi over 3, and 5 pi over 3. This is in quadrant 3. Cosine in quadrant 3 is negative. Cosine of 11 pi over 6, we know that's quadrant 4. Cosine is positive. The reference angle family is pi over 6. That's the root 3 over 2. And so it takes a while to get used to at the start. But after you've done several of these, and that's the key, you actually do need to do several of these. And it's not hard to work these. Just choose the function and choose several of the angles. So what I've done here is I've laid out 8 of these. What you can do now is pause the video, see if you can work these out, and then when you finish, you can turn the video back on and we'll have the values here. So if you're back now from working on those, these are the values we should have. Sine of pi over 6 is 1 over 2, 1/2. Cosine of 3 pi over 4 is negative 1 over square root 2. Cosine of 5 pi over 6 is negative square root of 3 over 2. Sine of 5 pi over 4 is negative 1 over square root of 2. Cosine of 11 pi over 6 is square root of 2, square root of 3 over 2. Cosine of pi over 4, well, that's in quadrant 1, so we know that's positive. That's 1 over square root of 2. Cosine of 5 pi over 3 is negative square root of 3 over 2. And sine 7 pi over 6, let's go ahead and think through this one. 7 pi over 6, that's quadrant 3, sine is negative. The reference angle family for pi over 6 is the vertical value, so that's 1/2. Negative 1/2 is that value. So those values you need to be able to practice until you have them very quickly and very accurately. So if you didn't get these values, see if you can go back and use the work from before to make sure you can find all those accurately and with not too much difficulty.